Welcome to our morning show today on WRCO Radio. We have in the studio with us Loren Glasbrenner, River Valley Administrator, and Brian Cry is with us today as well, River Valley Business Manager, to talk about some things coming up with the upcoming referendum. Loren, we'll start with you on a real positive note here. I thought the River Valley extracurriculars, winter sports went really well.
Yeah, it's been a really successful winter for River Valley. We're just so excited about the great things that kids get to do after school or be involved in beyond school, and just some things to shout out. We just had great success at Mock Trial, which is a great event for some of our kids, and we had David Van Halgren as the best witness, or Isaac Dybert doing best attorney. So those kind of speaking engagements that kids get to be involved in. Boys basketball finished up for us on Saturday evening. A hard defeat to Platteville, but they had a great showing this year. So they played Friday night at New Glarus and had a great win. So that's great. And congratulations to our boys basketball team as well as that coaching staff. They just did a great job. Then we flip over to girls basketball. Girls basketball had a great season as well. They finished higher with an average than they have in years. So probably been 10 years since our girls basketball team and status had been what it's been. We had Anya Sefrud that just went to state in gymnastics and got 5th in the vault. We've got kids involved in solo and ensemble, so the district solo and ensemble has been out there, and lots of kids singing and playing instruments. State will come up in May. We've had forensics. We've had an incredible team of wrestlers that maybe got a little bit crippled by some injuries, but other than that, they had a great season. So just all in all, great success. And just, again, I like to preach it. The more a kid is involved, the more a kid excels academically. And there's great statistics out there to show the correlation between being highly engaged in school in the day and out of the day in the afternoons and evenings gives them great academic success. So we're always pleased to offer those great things to kids at the Valley. So we're looking forward now, though. We have track and baseball and softball in the next couple weeks coming out. And as the sunshine comes up and we see the first robins fly back into our neighborhoods, it's kind of fun to think about spring sports.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I thought about that with River Valley track today. You know, the first day you can possibly practice, but you might even be out on the track today.
They will be. They'll be out there today. So it'll be fun. The sun shines out. We'll have a team out there just getting finally out into that sunshine and outside, and that's going to be really fun. I think you and Brian talked a little bit about baseball and softball in the next couple of weeks. We'll be coming out and having kids get involved with those things too. So, yep, I'm sure we'll still get a little rain or slush or snow in the next few weeks, but at least we're getting those fun things to start in the spring, and we've made it through the doldrums of the winter. We've sprung ahead, so the time frames have followed us. It was a little hard to get up this morning. I heard you earlier around the 5 o'clock hour talking about it's awful dark outside.
Yes, it
was really dark outside. You know, I'm letting the chickens out in Bear Valley, and it was a little dark this morning, but it's good to have the sunshine. And I'm sure tonight around 6:30 when the sun is still shining, we'll feel really good about that too. So we're excited about the spring and excited about just ending the year off in a strong way at River Valley.
The other thing that I was impressed with was I thought your participation was really good for winter sports, the teams that I was at. I mean, you had good numbers for JV and JV 1 and 2 and everything.
It is a goal of ours in River Valley to have every kid, 7 through 12, involved in something after school, whether it's FFA or whether it's forensics or whether it's student government or whatever it is. So we want 100% of our kids to be involved in something. And so we really try to find the things that maybe would really spark a kid's interest, whether it's the trap club. We have a new fishing team at River Valley, stuff like that to really keep us engaged again and try to find a diverse amount of things to keep kids in that school frame of being involved. So, yeah, we had great involvement in your typical winter sport, but we're always trying to find new things for kids to be engaged in as well.
How does a fishing team work? Do you fish against other schools?
You do. There was a state tournament. It was up at La Crosse, actually. Really? So it's really interesting. I'm learning as I go along. It's a fishing team. They basically, it's kids of either gender out there, and they're out there on the ice. And it really is the amount of fish that you pull in. Certain fish get greater points. So maybe a northern's better than a crappie, better than a bluegill. But then it's also the amount of fish that come in and the size. So let's say I bring in 42 bluegills. If they're little ones, it's not counted as highly as if you're bringing in a great big muskie or a great big northern. So all those things coming in gives them certain points, and that equals your team total, and that gets you to be at a tournament. So it makes me think of like those kind of, those kids that really love those bass fishing things on TV. In Wisconsin, it freezes over. So we have great things like a fishing club, and those are great things, and it involves a different group of kids. So it gets that diversity of kid out there and involved together with their colleagues or peers, I guess I would say. So it's pretty cool. Pretty fun to have that kind of stuff.
Had they had that when I was in school, I don't think I would have lettered because I'm not a very good fisherman.
My dad's a huge fisherman, and he absolutely loves it. And I used to try to go along and really engage in the fishing myself. I used to take a book along because I'm such a geek. But in that same sense, being out in the boat is a really good time, and I think it's fun to be out on the ice. So a lot of kids really enjoyed it.
So you're here to talk referendum, and, we've been talking about it during your monthly visits. It seemed like a long ways off, and here we are. We're less than a month away, aren't we?
Yeah, the vote will be on April 1st. So that's coming up pretty fast. It's within a couple weeks, and we really wanted to make sure that we talked about the referendum, made sure that people understood what it is. Again, Brian and I are here to talk about the information from the referendum. We can't really promote it, but we can really give you the best education possible so that you're an informed voter, and that's what our goal is, to always remind people to vote, but also remind them to be educated in what they're voting for. So we're trying our best to get the information out there. And today I brought in the chief, the person that's going to give us the best answers possible. Mr. Cry is going to talk through just some of the things of the referendum and the things that really get us prepared to talk about operational referenda. Again, this is not about a capital referendum where it's dealing with buildings or renovations or any of that. That's in our past. That's gone. This is about the programming that we offer to retain the great courses and classes and class sizes that we have currently. So this is about us just keeping going, and want to make sure that people are really clear about the difference between operational, which is coming up, and what we had in the past, which is capital. So those are two big differences that we got to make sure that people understand, and then that we'll have some informational meetings coming up to talk through those in your communities too, if you want to come out and chat with us in person.
Brian, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Used to call your games back in the day. You're a graduate of River Valley?
I am. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Actually, my classmates were chatting this weekend about our 30-year reunion. So,
has it been that long?
It has been that long. So, yeah. No, I'm excited to be here and talk about the referendum. Like Loren said, we just want to inform people. Per state law, we can't advocate for the referendum. We did send out a mailer to all box holders that everyone in the River Valley School District should have received, I think a couple weeks ago now. And it would have came in a bright green 8 or 11 by 17 piece of paper that was folded, and just provides an overview of why we need continued tax funding to, as Loren said, maintain what we're currently offering students in the classroom with courses, with programs and services. So,
crunching those numbers as you do every day, can you kind of give us an overview of what's needed and why this referendum is important?
It's a great question. Yeah. So we did a operational referendum in 2019, and then we did another one in 2022. So the operational referendum that was passed in 2022 expires after the school year. So in order to continue what we're doing, we need to essentially renew the operational referendum from 2022 for another 3 years. And we choose 3 years because, number one, I need to project revenues and expenditures for 3 years. And the state budget is a big part of our revenue, and we don't know what that's gonna give us in revenue for the next couple of years. So we've done a good job projecting in the past, but yeah, we need continued tax funding to continue what we offer students.
Mm-hmm. That's the big thing, and again, not to get political, but the funding hasn't kept up with the needs and actually some of the regulations that come down the line from the state.
Correct. Yeah. So like our revenue comes from the state budget, and in our flyer we talked about kind of three pieces. Number one, River Valley is not alone in holding an operational referendum. Richland Center did one last year in 2024, and actually 149 school districts in the state, which is about 35% of all school districts, held an operational referendum, and that's a referendum just for money. So, schools in our area last year, I listed on our flyer, they range from, Highland to Madison. So you can be a small district, a medium district, or a large district. But 35% of all school districts last year held one. And that doesn't mean that the problem's solved. It means that, they're probably going to need another one 2, 3, or 4 years down the road. One of my colleagues deemed this never-endums at this point, because the funding formula for school districts was created in 1992-93, and it hasn't been changed in 30 years. So with that, there's been some challenges, and many schools, including River Valley, need additional tax funding just to maintain what we have.
Mm-hmm. And so, I know you've been out at some of the meetings so far. You got more to come. What's the common question that you get from the audience, Brian, when you talk to those crowds? That's
a great question. I think the big one is, will this formula change? People have asked that, and that's not an answer that I can provide. That'd be for our elected officials. But we need to do. With what we need to do, what we have. I can't speak. I'm not even nervous. We just need to do the best with what we have, and we continue to right size our district. Mm-hmm. We are declining, but we are correlating staffing to our student population as best as possible. We did make a really tough decision in December and January, and there have been discussions about this prior to December and January, but we made the decision to close the Early Learning Center in Plain. And with that, all students will be in one of 3 buildings on the Spring Green campus. So with that come a lot of efficiencies with our staff, and we were able to reduce $1 million annually by closing the Early Learning Center and by having some efficiencies with our staff. So we made that choice knowing that we were going to have an operational referendum, and hopefully showing our taxpayers that we are trying to be diligent, frugal, whatever adjective you want to use with our budget money that we receive annually.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we look at the budget every year. We're always looking we want to provide the best education, obviously, for students. We want to do right by kids. We want to do right by families. But we also know that we have a budget, and we need to look at that every year, and we need to analyze and assess everything from whether it's co-curricular programs, class sizes, supports for students. We need to look at those every single year to make sure we're doing right by kids, but also doing right by taxpayers.
Yeah.
With the move, Loren, I was going to ask you too. Does that require any construction, like reconstruction of classrooms or anything like that? Or not?
Just a couple walls here and there, Phil. We're really trying to get all that movement to happen within the existing foundations of the buildings that we have. So we're really trying to do that move on $1, not many dollars at all. So we're really doing it efficiently. There's a lot of spaces available at the high school, and I've talked about this before. So we have 2 grades flying into the high school, 2 more grades coming into the middle school, and then 2 grades from up on the hill in Plain coming down to our elementary school. So in the end, we will have a 4K building that holds 4K, K1 and 2. So that'll be our elementary. We will have another building that will house grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, and that will become an intermediate. And then our high school will become a junior, senior high with 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 all within that building. So as Brian alluded to before, those 3 buildings will be on one campus, and we'll have those greater efficiencies. It makes me think of a quote that somebody gave me. I don't remember, but the whole referendum and the operational referendum stuff that we're talking about throughout the state of Wisconsin is not necessarily about expenses and people using the money poorly. It's about revenues, about what we can pull in as a public school system and how we can use it. So it's not about expenses, it's about revenues. And everybody always says, well, you're spending too much money. everybody across the state is spending too much money. That doesn't fly, right? There's 90% of our districts that are having to go to operational. It is truly a funding formula problem that Brian talked about that we need some people in our offices to really take a hard look at. And you and I have talked about this before. Those are going to be hard conversations, but it will have to happen in Wisconsin at some point because we can't continue down this road. But to get us to keep the great things that we're offering, like I talked about earlier, and the successful things that we have happen for kids, we need this operating referendum to keep us moving forward.
I know that you had some staff that kind of reduced time, some retired and things like that. Yep. You're kind of moving in that direction too.
Yeah, we did have to make some cuts. And again, those are really hard to do, but those are things that we have to do. So I was just at a meeting last week out in Arena, and they were like, that's really difficult work. It is hard work. You have to look at somebody and say, I'm sorry, that position's no longer what we can afford. And so we have to move there. But we did, through attrition, have some retirements, which allows us to move some people around. So hopefully the staffing doesn't have to change a tremendous amount. But through that, like Brian said, we were able to get to almost $1 million in savings, which is the highlight, right? You got to right size, you got to take a look at the checkbook again and make sure that you're staying within that budget. So we are, but now to continue forward with the courses and class sizes and programming, we need obviously what we're asking for. So,
and just to pay staff, Brian, teachers don't make an exorbitant amount, obviously, but you want to keep and maintain the staff that you have, and attract others too.
Absolutely, I think with the lack of revenue increases from the state, we've done a really good job of trying to attract great teachers and retain the great teachers we have, and that can be difficult when the pocketbooks are, there's not a lot there, and that's for us in every district around as well. I think it's important to note too, with the reductions we made in January with staff, that we're not reducing any courses or programs. We did reduce staff, but what we're offering to kids next year is the same as we offered this year. So they were very tough decisions, but the good news is that it's not going to have any impact on kids.
That's the main thing. Your referendum did not pass last year, but that was for building, and the district was pretty clear they were not in favor of that.
Correct. That was a capital referendum, so that was for buildings and facilities. It was really a renovation project.
Absolutely.
And I'll let Loren to speak to that, but it was a much different referendum.
Well, last year's referendum dealt with how to really take a hard look at the facilities that we have and how to move them forward really quickly, right? Like really going in and taking a look at maybe a bathroom facility, how to bring that up to code, how to really dig into the pipes or the plumbing or the whatever, the fixtures in a bathroom, and get it ready for next 25 years. We have to live within our means, and our voters gave us a very clear indication that we couldn't afford that at this time. I respect that. I need people to hear that we respected their votes last year, that we heard them loud and clear, and that we have to make those changes if we have any renovations within the existing facilities budget that we have. Great. I get it. So we've listened to the voter. We're trying to take on that. So it'll take us probably 5 to 10 years to make those changes. We will continue to have that part of our budget to make sure that we can make some changes. That'll always be there in any budget. But we're not going to do it over the summer, obviously, because that failed. So it talks about the speed of how quickly you can get things done in a district. So the capital's over. We're good with that. We understand that. We respect that. Now moving ahead with the operational, it's one of those things that this state funding is just something that hasn't kept up with inflation. And that's a really hard thing to explain. But in the idea, prior to 2009, in the state of Wisconsin, we got an adjusted school funding formula based on that inflation. So if inflation went up about 2%, a school district would get about 2%. Well, that ended in 2010. And so since 2010 to today, the last 25 years almost, or 15 years, sorry, my math was bad there for a second, we have not received inflationary increases like other businesses would have. You're able to increase the price of eggs, for example. There's a political topic. To increase your price because you know that your costs are going up. We can't do that. And so they put a very strict funding formula on school districts throughout the state of Wisconsin, and that's what's created this need for operational referendum. Again, the bigger districts that were growing were kind of protected, I would say, for the last 8 to 10 years. But even now, those larger districts are having to ask for operational money too. So these little districts like us, or like the Ithacas or the Wazeeka-Steubbens or the DeSotos, we've had to scrape along getting to where we are today. And bigger districts that were growing, like the Middleton Cross Plains or the Sun Prairies and Wanakees, were able to kind of keep up with the Joneses. Now everybody's in the same boat, and everybody's asking for operational funding. So those state adjustments have changed the way that we fund our schools in the state of Wisconsin. And those are things that I think legislators have to really take a hard look at, because they know they want good public schools and they know what they want rural Wisconsin to flourish. Well, then they're going to have to invest in it. And so, again, those are big topics beyond just River Valley, but those are things that we want to make sure that people understand, that it's not just a River Valley issue, it's an issue throughout the state.
Brian, I know that a lot of districts have done pretty well close to Madison, Waunakee and Mount Horeb. They're just growing districts. Is River Valley too far from Madison, the district? I mean, are you seeing people move out to the area?
We saw a few houses being worked on in the Village of Spring Green when we left this morning. But yeah, I think as far as growth coming from the Madison area, Sauk Prairie, I believe, is growing a little bit. Some Prairie exploded. But even Wisconsin Heights, which is much closer, isn't necessarily booming yet. So I think for it to trickle out to us, there's going to be other districts that are going to grow before us. So, we're hopeful that we think our district it's obviously very big geographically, and there's plenty of space for people to come on out and live in our district and bring your kids with you. So, I think just to piggyback what Loren said in regards to the funding formula, to provide a little context to the listeners, there was inflationary increases, as Loren said, prior to 2010. And from 2011 until 2020, we essentially got zero increase on our revenue limit per student. So there was a decade of no increase. And that's tough. Our expenditures don't just stay still. So we are subject to inflationary increases on our utilities, paying staff, as you mentioned, health insurance, transportation, all those things. We try to control them as much as possible. But when you're getting 0% increase on your revenues over a decade, it compounds year to year, which is why we had to have referendums in 2019, which was a 3-year referendum. 2022, another 3-year referendum. And and now we're here for another 3-year referendum that would cover us for beginning in the 25-26 school year.
And what do the numbers look like in terms of enrollment, or for the next several years? Yeah,
our enrollment, we're just under 1,100 kids in the district right now, and we're declining a little bit, but not as sharply as we were probably a decade ago. We are leveling out a little bit. Our junior and senior classes are probably going to be, our current junior class might be the last graduating class above 100 from what we can tell, and then we'll be in that mid-80s. As far as graduating classes go in River Valley. Much different than when I graduated or my brothers graduated, where my class was probably 115, 120, and some of my younger brothers' classes were, 135, 140. So for people that haven't been in school for 20 years, we're definitely changing. Doesn't mean anything for the worse. We're just getting a little bit smaller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess. I love to live in the past too, but those old days are never going to come back, because we don't see the big farm families and everything like we used to.
Right. No, exactly. I think when we do see people move to the area, they are, they're buying up maybe a little hobby farm, and they might have 1 or 2 kids. But a lot of the homes up for sale in our villages seem to be maybe for people that don't have kids and want to look to our area to retire. There's a lot of benefit in living in the River Valley. A lot of outdoor activities, a lot of indoor activities, and a lot to do. So
It does speak to that's an issue within the state of Wisconsin. Again, the state of Wisconsin in general is not growing. It's actually on the decline in the numbers of people in population. And there's a lot of rural people that talk about the rural brain drain, about how we get them ready. We get all these kids ready, and then they go off to college or they go off to work, and then they don't return. And that's one thing River Valley is really fortunate to have, because we're still fairly close to Madison. We don't see a lot of that rural drain where people don't return. But what we do see is the families of different generations. Like my family had 4 kids. I had 2 kids, almost half of what we have in family households. Out on all those big farms, whether you're the Legals or the Prems or the Kramers, like those great big families now are having 2 or 3 kids instead of 6 or 8 kids. So those large families have changed, and that definitely changes the demographic of a district, but it also changed the demographic of Wisconsin. That has happened all across the state of Wisconsin. And even larger communities, you're seeing like the closing of schools. One that I like to use as an example is La Crosse. La Crosse is closing multiple elementaries because they don't have all the children to fill those elementary school seats anymore. So everybody's having to consolidate, whether it's in urban, suburban, or rural. And I think we are still seeing a little bit of growth around some of the suburban areas, around the Milwaukee greater area, Wausau, or around Madison in the suburban areas. But otherwise, the urban and the rural are both declining.
You talked earlier some about your neighbors. How many districts does River Valley's district border? Any idea?
11 total.
That might be a state record. I don't know. That's a lot.
We're pretty lucky. I mean, again, we always talk about how we're land rich, right? We're land rich, but student poor. And I don't want to say the word poor in a negative context, but it's going down, right? So we are a large district. And when you speak to transportation, and I gave that shout out before, we have a tremendous amount of kids that are still out in the rural zones, but that requires us to have 22 bus routes. Most districts around our size would have 10. We don't. We have 22 because we're so large, right? We're going all the way to Reedsburg. We're going all the way to Dodgeville. We're coming over to Riverdale and Richland Center and Ithaca. We're going all the way over to Wisconsin Heights. So it can take you an hour to get around the district, and that's a good thing. Again, I'm excited about that, but it's also one of those things that gives us a challenge, and transportation is one of those things. We're excited about those things, but then that puts a complexity on. If gas prices go up, it costs more. I can't just tell a bus, oh, I'm sorry, you can't get out there anymore. It has to go out and pick up those kids. And so some of those costs that people say, oh, you're overspending, well, I've got to go get a kid. The cost of gas went up. And so that's where, we're just trying to always take a look at those hard numbers and really work in our offices to make sure we're offering the best things possible, trying to make sure that we're being really cognizant of the tax dollars that we are given, but also being really responsible. Our board has been very clear that if we can levy for more money and we don't need it, we won't ask for it. And so in the last few years, the River Valley School Board has been really frugal. They've worked really hard to make sure that if they could levy for a certain amount, that they were going to use that amount specifically for something that we had in the budget. And Brian will give you a few more, statistics about that, because I'm really proud of how River Valley School Board has been really responsible with the funding that they've received.
Yeah, it's 10 districts. We're number 11, so we border 10 different districts.
10, okay.
Yeah, fact checking here quick. We border 10, we're the 11th, but I think as Loren said, we need to make projections on our revenues for the next 3 years. So in the 2022 referendum that passed, I had to make projections for those 3 years. And thankfully, over the last 3 years, my projections were in revenue and expenditures was a little bit lower in the revenues and a little bit higher in my expenditure calculations. So in the last 3 years, River Valley has not taxed for about $1.3 million. And that's just because, as you asked earlier, what's the process? Well, I need to project revenues and expenditures for the next 3 years. If the state comes in and says, hey, we're going to give you, or we're going to allow you to have more money, well, then we don't need as much from the taxpayers. So our school board is very cognizant and I think very responsible in looking at that annually. If we don't need the money, we're not going to tax for it. So again, in the last 5 years, we actually haven't taxed. It's been about $1.7 million. And that's just because we get some revenues we weren't anticipating or some expenditures came in lower than we were anticipating. Health insurance, for example. If we make a change in our health insurance benefits to employees, which falls on their backs, the district does save some money, and we don't tax for it then. So, yeah.
It's almost like you have to have a crystal ball, Brian, to kind of, isn't it, to project 3 years out?
And again, kudos to Brian, because he's really conservative as we look at those numbers, because we never want to be caught with, in a bind. I guess I could give a lot of analogies there, but like you never want to be caught where you didn't have enough money in the checkbook to make the bill payments at the end of the month. And we've been really careful. River Valley doesn't like to think about short-term borrowing. Some districts do some short-term borrowing when it gets into that fiscal year that they really feel like they've got to struggle through it. So River Valley has that reputation and tradition of being really careful with their money. And I think that adds on to the tradition and the trust that our communities have provided us. Mm-hmm. They understand that we are not being careless with our spending and and they trust Brian Cry, and they trust the financial kind of forecasting that he's done. And I think to be conservative is wise, so that you don't get caught, with not enough money at the end of the day. So It's been really a really good thing for us to understand that we can tell our voters, hey, we didn't need it, we're giving it back. We didn't need it, we've given it back, rather than us kind of bringing it in, hiding it, not telling them about it, all that stuff. We don't do that. We've been very clear with our voters. And so that's something that I'm proud of, and I think something that we should be proud of, and everybody should thank Brian Cry for that, because that's something our board has been good about, but he's also been able to give them that kind of forecasting. So I do the forecasting, but the board is the final decision. I think the other thing that does is it keeps our mill rate down.
Yeah.
So, our mill rate this year was $7.35, which is actually the lowest mill rate since 1984. And I say 1984 because I can't find any further historical data before that. So,
what was that, Brian? When's the last time we had that low mill rate? Could you say that again?
Lowest mill rate since 1984. And with our projected mill rate for the next 3 years, we sent it out in the flyer. For a property that is $100,000 in value, we're looking at a $39 increase in year one, $66 in year two, and $69 in year three. So I like to put that in monthly perspectives, Phil. So that's $3.25 in year one, $5.50 in 26-27, and $5.75 per month in year three on a $100,000 property value. And that, one of the other major questions was, what is it if I have a $250,000 house? And you can do that math and multiply the numbers I just said by 2.5. So it would be, for a $250,000 house, it'd be $8 or $9 a month in year one. It'd be about $15 a month in year two, and $15 a month in year three ish. So I think we have historically done a good job at River Valley with budgeting, with trying to control the mill rate as much as possible, and doing our taxpayers right.
Mm-hmm. In comparison to some of the surrounding districts, you've done quite well.
Yeah, I think we try to, you don't necessarily want to be at the top. You don't want to be in the bottom. And, we always compare ourselves to those 10 districts that we have borders with. And currently, River Valley is the 8th out of 11 in regards to mill rate, with number 1 being the highest and number 11 being the lowest. So we're on the lower end in comparison to those districts we touch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even with that projected tax rate that's coming out with that new mill rate stuff, that still would be less than what was paid from 2014 through 2021.
Yeah.
Right? So if you look in your flyer, folks, and you're trying to compare that, we're still after the 3 years. If you vote yes, even after 3 years, we're still below where we were in 2021, based on the way that we have right-sized, based on the way that we have tried to be really conservative, based on the way that we've tried to be very careful with our money. So you're not seeing also a lot of spikes and valleys within our projections. You're seeing a really constant flat rate that we're trying to contain and kind of maintain in River Valley as well. And I think that's important to the voters, that it's not these large swings up and down when you're looking at your tax rates. It's a very flat, projectable, also sustainable amount.
Okay, we'll take a break and come back and talk more with our friends from River Valley here today, Brian Cry and Loren Glasbrenner on The Morning Show. We're talking about the River Valley School District, our monthly visit with Loren Glasbrenner, and Brian Cry is in the studio with us today as well. We talked at the outset about all of the courses and all of the extracurriculars that you offer, but certainly, you have a wide variety of things that are offered, and you'd like to see that continue, Loren.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to prioritize that our students have diverse needs, right? We know that kids all like different things, and we have to keep up with that. I talked about it a little bit, whether a kid's out for cross country or track or fishing club, they're all diverse, right? They like different things. So we want to make sure that we continue to have that as our focus. Ultimately, we want to make sure that every kid leaves River Valley prepped for their next steps. And we want to make sure as we prepare them, they're prepared for work, or they're prepared for college, or an internship, or maybe they're going off to the service. But wherever they go, we want to make sure that they're ready to go and that they have all in their background this wide variety of courses. So we're excited about continuing to offer things that most districts offer, like art and music, which would be like band and choir. We want to make sure that things like Spanish and business are there. But another thing that we're just so proud of in River Valley is that we have 3 incredible tech ed teachers. We still have a full-time welding teacher. We still have a full-time automotive teacher. We still have a full-time woodworking teacher, because we know kids want to go into carpentry. They need to go out and get ready to build the houses of the future. We know that they have to go out and get ready to help fix those cars, whether they're new models or old. We know that welding is it's a burgeoning field that people want to get into, and it's a great field for a lot of kids that want hands-on ability. So those are things that we want to retain, because we know that this variety of courses keeps our kids interested and keeps River Valley being a place where kids want to go to school. Within that, we have youth apprenticeships that we offer. We have dual credit that we offer. We have AP courses that we have to offer. So all of those things become this wide selection of things that we have to give to our student body so that they can stay interested in school. I don't want you to think that, they're offering too much. No, we're trying to remain competitive, but also give the kids what they need, because diverse fields are out there. There are kids that will go into computer programming, so I have to make sure that there are businesses and business classes, so to speak, and computer classes so that they're ready for those. There are kids that will go into financial institutions, so I got to make sure that they're ready for accounting. So all of those diverse things that we offer for kids grades 7 through 12 are out there, and it allows us to remain competitive and get kids ready for what they need as they leave us and go on to their next steps. Hopefully, they go off for just a couple years and come right back and live within our district as well, because we want them to return and be proud of where they came from.
Technology-wise, do you have to invest in upgrades, software every year, Brian?
We do. So we've been a one-to-one Chromebook school since, it's probably been about 6 years now. And easy to budget because we lease them. So we're on a rotation. Actually, we don't lease them anymore. We were, but now we're buying them, and we have a good rotation where it easily fits in the budget every year. So each student in grades, I believe it's 5 and 9, get a Chromebook. They usually last for about 4 or 5 years. So we've been able to fit that into our budget on an annual basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
That works really well. I know the accountability score, you talked about that a little bit, but would you like to touch on that a little bit more?
Well, it's just something that we're really proud of. The district on their school report cards, and again, the school report cards is just a measure that the Department of Public Instruction puts out there to make sure that your district is continuing to analyze the systems that are in place to make sure that your kids are remaining competitive academically. So again, those are the state tests that we have, and that's the Wisconsin Forward or the ACT. And again, in the last 5 years, River Valley has seen just a nice steady increase in the way that we're getting those school report card scores out. So in the last 5 years, we've slowly gone up. And so when we compare ourselves to our neighbors, again, we're near the top. So when we talked about how much we spend, again, we were near the bottom. But when we talk about how well we're doing, we're seeing that academically, we're right up there where we want to be near the top. So I think those are 2 just really nice systematic ways of looking at how we're evaluated by our state of Wisconsin. And I'm really proud of that rating scale, because it just shows that we exceed expectations in the classroom. And those are things that we should be really proud of, that we have a really hardworking and dedicated staff of professionals and assistants that continue to work with the kid in mind. And they really want those children to do well. And just really proud of the people that we have in River Valley. It takes a family, it takes a team to get through the days. And we're just really lucky with the people that have devoted their careers to us at River Valley as well.
You get good support from the business community, Brian.
Huge, yeah. Loren mentioned our youth apprenticeships, and I believe we have just over 40 kids that are doing a youth apprenticeship this year, which means they're partnering with a local business to earn, just on-the-job training, skills from whether it's at a local farm or a local bank or a local construction company. Great skills for kids. I think, too, like Loren mentioned, that the work our staff is doing, they are obviously doing an incredible job based on our report card scores, based on our internal things we look at. And they're going to do even more work when we move into 3 buildings this summer.
Well, tell us about that, because you've got the spreadsheet. It's kind of like a puzzle, isn't it?
It is. The king of spreadsheets, let me tell you.
It's laid out in a spreadsheet, and it is a little bit of a puzzle. Yeah, so we will, as we said, we're going to be in 3 buildings. And the current high school will include 7th and 8th grade. So if you're familiar with our high school building, the 7th and 8th grade are actually going to be over in what we call the 98 wing, or the newer wing that was built back then. So they'll be a little bit separated from the rest of the high school. The high school, then the grades 9 through 12 will be down what we call the 93 wing to the north, and then the original hallway to the east. So there will be a little separation between the 7th and 8th graders and the 9th through 12th graders. And with the change, about half of our teaching staff is going to be moving classrooms. Some going from the early learning center to the elementary, some from the elementary to the current middle school, and some from the current middle school to the high school. And then there are some teachers moving within the buildings. So, for example, the high school math teachers are in the 98 wing down by our gymnasium, and they'll be moving into the east wing, one of the original hallways. So it's going to be a lot of work, but it's work we need to do, and I'm glad that I feel like we're ahead of schedule, because we do have a plan, and it's still early March.
A huge shout out to those teachers, because we've been saving boxes since we started talking about this. And so in November, when we brought up these ideas, and then in December, when the board decided, we're going to finally close that building up in Plain, the immediate reaction from our elementary staff is, where are we going to get all these boxes? How are we ever going to be able to pack all this stuff? A huge shout out to them. They've already started that process. So as I finished up maybe my pumpkin unit in October, and I worked really hard to make sure that my kids were really focused on this great unit, well, that's not getting packed away into a cupboard. That's getting packed away into a box. And I'm labeling that well, and I'm taking that with me. So teachers are sifting and sorting all year this year. They're working really hard, and they're trying to make sure that they're bringing the essential things forward. And so those teachers, if they hear this, please know that we thank you. We know that it's hard work. We know that there's extra that you have to do with probably less, but that's just what we're doing in the field of education, and that it's not just us alone, that this is something that our community has to do together, and that we're here to support you through that. And so we're really thankful for the hard work and the boxes that you're filling, but that we're going to be there all summer to support you as we get that down the hill, or from this building over to that building, and that we're going to work really hard to make sure that we're prepped for next August, because we know that we can do this. We know that we have the energy to do what's right, and this is what's right for River Valley. So we're excited about that, trying to see that as an opportunity rather than a deficit. And so we're really excited about this great opportunity to get us all on one campus, to get us all kind of closer together so that we can work efficiently and work together to make what the tradition of River Valley has had in the past continue for the next 25 years or so.
Well, Brian, worst case scenario, what happens if the operational referendum fails?
That's a great question, and that is a common question. So if it fails, we're only allowed to do referendums during actual election dates, and there's not a fall election date this year. So if it fails, we'll have to come back. The earliest we can come back would be April of 2026, and waiting until April of 2026 will put us in a very financially fragile position. Loren talked about short-term borrowing. It's possible that we might have to borrow money, which many districts do. Our cash flow ebbs and flows just to make payroll. So if it fails, we will come back in April of 2026, most likely for more money, because we'd be a year behind. And if that were to fail in April of 2026, we would have to make some really tough decisions and probably drastic decisions in regards to the courses, programs, and offerings we provide to kids. But I want to counter that with what if it passes? And if it passes, River Valley, we get to maintain what we currently have. The great courses we offer, Loren, the wide range of things we offer kids going into a career, whether they're going to college or to the service. We get to continue those, and that I think we do offer a great education for kids, and that's what we just want to continue doing.
Absolutely.
You're going to be out for some meetings in the public as well, aren't you?
Yeah, as we navigate this process, we're going to be talking in the communities tonight. We're actually going to be up in Plain at the Early Learning Center in the gymnasium. So if you want to come out, if you're up around Plain around 6:30 tonight, we'll be there. Tomorrow night, we'll be down in Lone Rock over at the Lutheran Church in Lone Rock at 5:30. And then we have one again next week at the middle school for people that are closer to Spring Green. And that's on next Tuesday, the 18th at 5:30. So again, these dates are in your flyer. One tonight, one tomorrow night, and one a week from tomorrow night down in Spring Green. But please come out and see us. We're here to educate you. We're here to help you understand as we navigate this. It's an incredible process, right? We've been on a journey, and we want to make sure that you're aware of the journey that we're on. So we'll provide those updates and opportunities to our community about that. If they have any questions, I encourage them to reach out to myself or reach out to Brian.
Yes.
We're here for you. We're only as good as the questions that you send us in answering them. So please let us know what those questions are. If you really want to know about something really specific or really granular, just reach out. We're available. So call the district office. We'll get that set up. We can come out and meet with you. So we're more than happy to answer those questions. We're not trying to hide anything. We're being as transparent and as open as we can about our process so that people feel like they can trust us as we give them the answers that they need.
Yeah. Brian, anything you
I
want
would
to
just chime in and say, don't wait for these meetings to ask questions.
No.
Like, we are available via phone. I know our cell phones are available as well. Email. I'm really not on social media, so don't do it that way. So please call or email us if you have questions. You do not need to wait for these meetings. No. And we actually have a link on our website too, where you can actually just submit them via really easy questionnaire online, and we would get back to you via email then too. So if you have questions, don't wait. Contact the district office, 608-588-2551, and we will get you an answer as soon as we can.
You bet. And if you want to go to that website, it's rvschools, rvschools.org. So rvschools.org. You can go click on that, and you can type in your question there, and we'll get you an answer as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. We want to answer your questions so that you can make the best decision for us all. And again, just a reminder, get out there and vote on Tuesday, April 1st.
Well, and the next time you're on, you'll be recapping the election.
We sure will. And talking about all those great things that are going to happen, the sunshine out there in the spring sports.
Oh, can't wait.
You
Usually my first baseball or softball game, I'm sitting on a snowbank, so you never know.
That's true.
Brian, thanks for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it and just inform people about not only the referendum, but hopefully about our school.
Absolutely. We're proud of what we do over in River Valley. We have some of the best jobs around. To be part of the leadership team over at River Valley and to continue to push those Blackhawks ahead in the success that they've had in the past. So a proud tradition that we want to continue as we move forward.
Thanks to Brian Cry and Loren Glasbrenner, our guests on today's morning show.